our yes, Terry has to turn his on. Okay. Everybody's tuned in. Okay. Mona, if you'll call the roll.
Yes. Director Davison is absent. Director Ratterman?
Here.
Director Underhill?
Here.
Director Mills?
Here.
And Director Strange?
Here.
Okay. Item number 2, public comment. At this time, members of the public may address the board on any non-agendized item. The public is encouraged to work through staff to place items on the agenda for board consideration. No action can be taken on matters not listed on the agenda. Comments are limited to 5 minutes per person, and I can tell we already have public comment.
Good morning, Madam President.
Good morning.
Board. My public comment concerns the community of Vallecito, and they have a request from you. I don't know how many of you know that we have lost both Helen and Ray Beerbaum. Helen was instrumental in working with CCWD to get Vallecito's sewer system up and running in the beginning. Helen and Ray were both very instrumental in doing the income survey that allowed CCWD to get a grant for the latest improvements at Douglas Flat facility. What the community is asking of the board, and I don't know if we can do this as board or if we have to do it individually, we are looking for donations. We want to put a granite bench in the Vallecito Cemetery in their memory. The Vallecito Cemetery was one of Helen's, I don't want to say pet projects, but she was a driving force on keeping it up and clean and making it run well. These two were so instrumental in our community with not only the water, the sewer, but also the fire service. And Ray was a chaplain for the fire service in Calaveras County. In fact, he was one of the founding chaplains for that organization, so there are now more of them. Which is one of the reasons, and I will be going to the fire service agencies next. But like I said, I don't know if the board can do this as a donation as a whole, but if they can't, then Vallecito would really appreciate individual donations. Thank you.
This is not, a CCWD. Well, it is because we all remember Ray Beerbaum and what an influence he had on the board. I'm sorry, I didn't know when Helen had passed away.
Yes, that was about, 2 weeks ago now?
2 weeks ago. Because we just saw the...
She passed a few days after Ray.
Wow.
Oh, right. Yes, that was quite a shocker, and yeah, certainly. So if maybe you can work with Mona on handling that donation part of it, I'd appreciate it.
Oh, no
Okay.
problem. Like I said, I just wanted to bring it before the board.
Yes, thank you very much, Vicki.
Okay.
Other public comment?
Yes, I'm here to public comment. My name is Peter Ricks from Jenny Lynn. I'd like to ask if it's possible, I know it's possible, but I would like the board to consider doing it. I'd like to know the total cost of the DC trip, the total cost, all concerns that are involved, the total amount that I would like to see. I went through the agenda items, and it mentions that they went, and I really appreciate their hard work and stay. And we don't even go, anyway, just leave it with that. The other thing is that I've been waiting for the board to, for months now, disclose any and all real properties that this organization owns and costs related to it. What did it cost? Is it an asset? Is it a liability? And I think it would be nice to disclose it. It's been months since the committee been looking into it. I don't know if they're getting all the information or for whatever reason, there's a substantial assets or liability on this organization. And I think it would be open and transparent and honest if that would be disclosed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further public comment? Item number 3, the consent agenda. The following items are expected to be routine, non-controversial. Items will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member may request that any item be removed for later discussion. Item 3A, approval of minutes for the board meetings of October 14th and October 20th, and review of the Board of Directors' monthly timesheets for October 2015.
Move for acceptance. My second.
I'd like to pull 3B.
Pull 3B. 3A.
Modify my motion to acceptance of 3A.
Okay.
I second that motion.
Okay. Scott and Dennis. Okay, call for the vote.
Director Rademan?
Yes.
Director Mills?
Yes.
Director Strange?
Yes.
And Director Enderby?
Yes. 3B, Director Strange.
Yeah, I notice on Director Mills' October 13th date, a meeting with Congressman McClintock in 10 miles of claimed mileage. So I assume that that was an official business meeting then with Congressman McClintock. I'd like to remind the board that we do have a legal affairs committee. So I don't, I'd like to get more information on what that meeting was about and whether, as far as what was discussed, whether it represented CCWD's position or viewpoints on any particular thing or not. So you tell me how the process of getting that information brought forward, how we can do that. I mean, again, we've got a legal affairs committee, and those are generally for district-related, communications with political entities and whatnot. So,
And I think the last time we discussed that was a point, whether or not we had committees, whether or not we had representation, and how, in fact, if I may ask, would we discuss this particular item with Director Mills?
And I hate to do this because it seems like a cop-out, but it really is the will of the board, I think, on these items like this, and the clarity that you can provide. If and as we discussed last time, I mean, the way we've been, the practice under the policy to date has been, that you've had basically broad discretion to be able to go and have these meetings, whether it's with agencies or individuals, and to do this. And there has been some discussion. Well, if it's something that looks more, if it's a political group, for example, and they don't have anything that it's related to our business, or that we're not asked to speak on an issue, then you don't feel like that should be reimbursed. Some of the other things specifically like this, there hasn't been a discussion on it. We've just been doing this more discretion each board member to make the decision. So that's kind of what I'm operating under, and I would just look to the board if you want to. If you want to say that for this type of meeting you want to see certain board members go, or you want to have the item discussed, the fact that you're going to be meeting with a congressman in advance of going to the meeting or something like that, whatever the board desires is what I'm going to to follow when I receive the request for reimbursement. So I'm not really adding anything there, but I'm looking to you guys to make the decision on that, and I'll just apply whatever's the will of the board on this.
I think the board policy does say asking for, approval in advance, isn't that? isn't that what it generally is? And I know,
Well-
visits with someone like that can be kind of spontaneous.
Sure.
Yeah, but I really, I understand what you're saying, Director Strange, that going as a CCWD director is the point, representing the agency. And so,
Yeah, and I'm not accusing anybody of anything, it just, I feel like it's in the best interest of the board to know in advance or whatever the information might be discussed.
Well, I think more importantly, and Dennis, you maybe should talk to this point that I know in the past I've seen comments in the paper that were contrary to what the board's decision was, and the message was delivered to the public after the board had spoke. It was on 142, what the wild and scenic. I know that you're against it. However, the board, when you spoke on the subject, you presented views in the public against 142 after the board had already voted. And I think and I think that's probably what we're talking about. What we're talking about here, that when you spoke to Congressman McClintock, did you relay not your personal opinions, but the opinions of the board, and to relay those to him and make sure that you're staying on topic?
I look at this particular meeting, if this is what is really the question, is this was a town hall meeting that Congressman McClintock had up in Murphy's immediately after the Washington D.C. trip. And he took the time to give me some background information of what that conversation was, but it was also an opportunity for me to voice the opinions of my constituents on the Lake Tulloch issue and the Stanislaw issue, as I have Lake Tulloch Alliance and other groups down in that area that have definite concerns, and they were present there as well. So anytime that I'm going to meetings, it's not just a matter, if we want to break it down to where no meeting shall be reimbursed if it does not truly represent a piece of CCWD, that's fine. I've said, let's bring this back as travel and compensation and thin it down to where the only thing you're paid for is to go to meetings. Happy doing that. But right now, my primary goal is to represent the constituents that elected me, and that is what I will do. And if the board doesn't agree,
But you're not
then
charging.
they will have to do that.
You're not charging those constituents for your miles. You're charging the district.
Those constituents ultimately do pay for the trip, if you think about it. They do pay for the trip. And they're my constituents.
I think for me, if the information that you share representing CCWD is different than what the board adopts as a whole, then we need, that needs to be very clear. And in my opinion, if it's not, it might be to err on the side of caution would be that we don't claim mileage or any sort of reimbursement for those kinds of meetings.
And that would be a choice that the board can certainly make.
And it's a choice that you can make.
I have no issue with that if it is a consensus of the board to do that.
because I believe that is, yeah.
That solves a lot of the issue. I'm not going to be, in essence, be silenced in my ability to speak on behalf of the people who are in my district and their opinions, and not being able to talk to a congressman or to an assemblyman is, that's you're talking about First Amendment rights here, so be careful.
Okay. Dennis, I don't think we're going that far. We're not talking about your First Amendment rights. What we're talking about is an extension of director compensation.
Then I would suggest-
And we discussed last time that we would submit for reimbursement if it represented, or if what you were doing represented CCWD as a whole.
I'm going to go back to 4020 subsection D, and if you want to remove subsection D, then bring it back, change the ordinance, fix it. But until D is in place, as long as D is in place, then the option is there. And this discussion needs to go back to the Finance Committee and to get subsection D rewritten or removed to bring it into alignment with what the board is asking to have done. And again, I said I have no problem in doing that. But subsection D is a driver to much of what is being in place on this claim summary. And we have the option as to what we present.
And I respect Director Mills' request to bring that back to the Finance Committee.
Okay, and if that is the direction of the board, and, that's kind of what we talked about last time. I mean,
Right.
the alternative to that existing provision under the policy, which again does allow, and the way we've interpreted it is allow each director to make those decisions, where they're going to go, what they're going to do, and what they're going to submit for reimbursement on. Alternatively, and going through the Finance Committee and then the board, we can look at making expressly, if the board wants to expressly designate who will be representing the district on different issues before different individuals and in different venues, then that would be an alternative.
And then only those are the ones that would be reimbursed for.
Yeah, and you could always, if there's something, if that's too constrained and if something came up and an individual board member felt like they needed more flexibility with the board, you could always come back to the board and say, for these reasons, I need to be able to, engage in these meetings and get reimbursed for it. And the board could certainly add that to its list. Just from the perspective, and I probably didn't articulate it very well, but that's what I was saying from my point of view, trying to apply the policy as I get the request for reimbursement. The more clarity you can provide, the more it helps me. I don't, the last thing I want to do is be in a position where, things that I should be able to handle are having to routinely come to the board. And so I would welcome the opportunity to work that through committee and then the board if that's the desire.
Yeah, ultimately, we don't want you to be the bad dog in the decisions here.
Yeah, I don't, yeah, there are different issues at play, and they're really issues for the board to decide, so.
And I think the real issue here is you're an elected official on this board, and which is the reason you're being reimbursed and sitting up here in the first place. And as a elected official of the board, when you're speaking in public, your personal views, when you go to a meeting and you actually ask for reimbursement from the entity that you're elected to represent, and I certainly realize who it is that's submitting the votes are your constituents, but as a member of a board, your your individualness, it kind of goes away. You're no longer an individual when you asking the board to pay for part of that process. You're representing the board, and you should be representing. I mean, it's a behavior issue. You should be representing the board's interest out in public, especially if you're asking the board for reimbursement, and it's kind of your individual rights. Sure, no one's taken away any amendment. You're not being affected that way. You're just being asked to behave properly in public when you're an elected official representing CCWD, and you go out in public, and especially talking to a congressman, and your views might differ. I mean, you might differ from the board. That should be kept separate, and have those meetings and not in a public meeting asking for reimbursement. There should be some consistency is a reason, and I didn't even notice it, but I think it's the reason that Terry has brought it up, and it's a valid point.
I don't see this as a time to really, go to training, so to speak, on, how we handle our individual roles here. This is a policy issue, so let's take it back and make it a policy issue and have the board be comfortable with what reimbursements are going to be available to each individual. But how we handle our particular position as elected, where each one of us have a vote here, and each one of us have a concept of what that position is to be and how we are to represent the people within our districts. And that's not always going to be the same. And you may see somebody else in this chair in sometime in the future. So whatever we do here, let's be sure that, there's a lot of clarity for our staff to not have to, how shall I say, put this into a point where it might become petty bickering or might look bad in the public's eye, that we're airing all of this stuff.
And my point was that I don't think it's a financial issue, and I don't think it's something that needs to be heard by the finance department, or the finance committee, rather. I think it's a behavior issue, that if you're representing a board you should represent the board. I mean, if you're a member of the board, you should represent the board. Us as individuals have no power to do anything, but us as a board have the power to do a lot of things.
Well, I said before, and I'll say it again, I represent the constituents first and CCWD second, and that will be the way it'll be until I leave.
In closing, what I would recommend, my suggestion to all board members is that there are many different special interest groups within the district that we represent. And many of those special interest groups have very much opposing viewpoints on resource management and how this district should or should not be not only managed, but what we represent in the public. So I would caution that in having conversations, especially with high-level political entities, that it's very clear who or whose perspective that you bring forth, i.e. identifying it as the issues of the Lake Catholic group or whatever it might be, and really be clear that it's not your personal perspective, but whatever entity that you might represent, because you may find that there are other groups living within that area that have an opposing viewpoint and would like for you to speak on their behalf as well.
Maybe I should have that little card put together that says, I do not represent the views of CCWD or its board. These are my personal views. I've used that so many times. I'm used to saying it before I get into discussions at any group or meeting. So these people, it's interesting. They appreciate what I have to say. I wouldn't be out there being invited to different things if they didn't appreciate the views. So that being said, let's move it into the venue to where we can clarify it for the staff and get it cleaned up.
Okay, we have a little bit of a problem, however, because we're saying that we're going to take this back to the Finance Committee. We have a director who doesn't think that should be our avenue, correct?
Well, yeah, I mean, I just don't think the problem or the issue, the discussion here is about finances. The 10 miles at whatever, it's the principle of the thing. It's the behavior behind the action, and the role of a board member is to act on behalf of the board, and everybody's an individual in the county. The reason you're being sought out and your opinion is being sought after by the paper and by other individuals as you're an elected official, period. And as an elected official, when you're no longer an elected official in this small county, I think that would be the time to give your own opinions. But during the time that you're an elected official, your opinions do reflect on the district in this small community.
And when I wasn't elected and they were still seeking me out,
That would be your personal opinion.
again, subsection D is the place to apply. I don't know if Matt, not to put you on the spot, do you have subsection D, 4020?
Subsection D does provide for reimbursement. I think we talked about this, it might have been at the last meeting, for various meetings, and it lists, it gives an example of associations and different meetings that are essentially pre-approved. And I think the question turned to last meeting, there's subsection C and D. C says you have to get approval from the board or be on a specific committee, and D provides that you can go to certain meetings. They're a little inconsistent, and I think that's what Director Mills is pointing out as to how you want to clarify that. I think some of the discussion today and last meeting centered around how you guys were going to interpret that and how you wanted to govern yourselves with respect to those meetings. And I think that some of the conversation we've had previously and some of the conversation today is correct. Everybody has a right to speak personally about whatever they want to do. You can't stop that, but when you speak on behalf of the district, you have to speak through approval of the board. You can't represent the district with your independent comments because the board only acts through three of you have to agree on something to act.
That sounds pretty clear that you must act with approval of the board this was an example that at least I
And
didn't
that's
have in front of me, or?
You know, the question is, the meeting, what I heard, and I'm not going to interpret as to the authority of, but what I heard was there was a meeting, there was some discussion, I think, on issues of the board and other issues, and the question for the board is, how does the board want to handle that in the future, and should you be reimbursed for that, or should you agree that, no, we're not going to be reimbursed for that? And that is a board decision. I mean, and it's not, I know Dave doesn't want to make that decision, and I think that just need a clarification from the board, how you guys want to conduct that in the future.
Because this, of course, goes back to, and Dennis and I have discussed this, when he gets up to talk in front of a group, he always says that this is my personal opinion. However, the way it's treated by the media says Dennis Mills, speaking on his own behalf, a member of CCWD, that is where we get into
I think the
The
issue
real-
too is that whenever there is a vote where, and there's been a number of cases here, where an individual director votes in opposition to the majority, the press is going to seek out that person and want to know more, want to understand more, and to be able to have that clarification. And so many of the times that I've been talked to about it or asked about it has been directly the result of
A no vote.
Can you support your no vote with a reasoned discussion as to why you felt that that was the best choice for your constituents? So in going to the press, if the press decides that they're only going to deal to respond to the majority vote on a board, that doesn't give the public an opportunity to actually see what the other pieces of that discussion look like. So I understand the discomfort here, but at the same time, I'm very clear that if the press desires to want to know more about what I'm doing and why, I'm more than willing to talk to them.
I'm sure you are. I'm sure you are.
I would just recommend in the future that maybe the 50 cents or whatever reimbursement for 10 miles or $5, maybe the individual director not seek compensation. And in my mind, it is more financial than what Director Ratterman had to say. So, because again, I was just looking at and referring back to the reimbursement sheet.
All right.
So-
And Madam President, if it's the will of the board, and we do have the opportunity with the Finance Committee meeting between our next board meeting in December, if you'd like to start there, we can, and that's been our practice in the past. We did that with this policy before. Certainly that's, that body's not going to decide any changes to the policy anyway. And if it can't come up with a recommendation, that will be communicated to the board. And we'll just plan to have this back on the agenda for the December meeting, and with a recommendation for action to address a specific issue and the conflict between a couple of the provisions that we have. There's not enough clarity. So,
Okay, we will agendize it
Okay.
for December.
All right.
So then, should I make a motion to accept 3B, incorporating the initial, or the discussions that we just had? Okay, I'd like to make that motion.
And I would second. Okay.
Director Ratner?
Yes.
Director Mills?
Yes.
Director Strange?
Yes.
And Director Murphy?
Yes. Okay. New business, 4A. Presentation by Ryan Jolly, CPA, concerning the district's fiscal year 2014-15 audit. Jeffrey Meyer.
Good morning, Madam President, members of the board. The item before you is to receive and file the fiscal year 2014-15 independent auditor's report and financial statements as presented by the auditing firm of Brian Jolly, CPA, who is here today to give a presentation and to answer your questions regarding the audit. The purpose of the audit is to provide you, the board of directors, district staff, ratepayers, bondholders, and other interested parties with useful information concerning the district operations and financial position. It is the district's responsibility for the accuracy, completeness, and fairness of the data presented in the report. The report has three main sections. There's section 1, the introductory section, section 2, the financial section, and section 3, which is the independent auditor's report on internal controls over financial reporting and compliance on matters based on the audit. Bryant will probably go through the majority of that. I will leave it to the expert. However, with pride I say again that the auditors have issued an unqualified opinion for the fiscal year 2014-15 audit, which in their terms is a clean audit, and one in which the independent auditors can state without reservation that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles and government accounting standards. This is, ever since I've been here, we've received unqualified opinions, which is a real credit to this district, to your board for providing direction and for our work of our employees. At this time, I'd like to allow Brian to provide some background on the audit and answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, good morning, Brian. And
Directors, I'm pleased to be here to present for your approval the audit financial statements of the district for the year ending June 30, 2015. As Jeff mentioned, we've issued an unqualified opinion on the finances of the district. I'd like to just point out a few highlights. Regrettably, the statements get more and more complicated. Standards overload. You incorporated GASB 68 this year, added almost 5.5 additional pages to the notes, 2 supplemental schedules. What this intended to do was take unfunded liabilities, namely the retirement plan, PERS, and report it on here. Prior to that, PERS as GASB 45, post-employment retirement benefit, health benefits, were pay as you go. And that's been the way for the last 50, 80, 90, 100 years. But in an attempt to increase transparency, they want to put all these liabilities on there. Because 30 years ago, medical insurance was maybe $10, retirement was $20 a month. No one cared too much about it. Mortality was lower. People died earlier. And this is all kind of working against governments right now because they were very generous in their plans. And so now it's becoming, these are the 2 largest liabilities usually governmental agencies are faced with. So we incorporated them this year, and that made the balance sheet look a little different. But I will, unless you have specific questions or you do, you can always call myself or my staff. We have 2 new items, deferred inflows and deferred outflows. Let me just real quickly explain those. Pensions are, no one can do a pension on a timely basis. There's too much information. So there's always a 1, 2, 3 year lag in information. Your pension evaluation was done as of June 30, 2014. So we're already a year and a half behind it at this point in time. So the deferred inflows, outflows are really the payments for the current fiscal year going out. And the inflows would be stock market changes and other things like that. You now know about as much as I do. It's very complicated, and this is how actuaries make a living. So those are those 2 items on there. And we ended up with adjusting your beginning balances by almost $8 million to reflect these new liabilities that came on the books. Just as reference, GASB 45, your post-retirement health benefits, they're still on a basically pay-as-you-go, but I believe it's 2017 or 2018 they'll be totally brought on board, same as the pensions. But in both cases, you're actually funded much better than other government agencies I see. As I've said before, I commend the district here. I think you've done, over the last 6, 7 years we've done the audit, I've seen ongoing improvement every year. You're not the only agency I've come across that's funding their GASB 45, the medical benefits properly. You're actually overfunded right now by a little bit, which is very good. And you Jeff did some good things. A year or two ago, we paid off the side funds, borrow money in lesser amounts that generated good income to the district with very little, with no cost to this district. But that's good news. We moved on. If you would turn to page 11. Page 11 is page 10. Is the statement of revenues and expenses, changes in fund balance. This is your profit and loss, that we call it in normal terminology. It too gets a little complicated because of many things going on and off in the funds itself, but a little bit of effort, you can kind of work through it and take a look at it and see what's happening.
I see on page 10, it's a statement of net position, proprietary funds. Page 11 is the statement of revenue, expense, and changes.
Yes, it's number 10.
Number 10, okay.
Statement of revenue, expense, and changes in fund net position.
That's 11 for us.
Okay. Yeah, because we added an additional page.
Okay.
I'm working off of it.
It's already confusing for me, so,
I grabbed a copy here.
okay.
Sorry about
Thank you,
that.
that's all right.
And if you look on it, change in net position was a positive, but that is primarily due to the capital R&R fees, which is part of your 5-year rate increases, and also substantially due to contributed capital, which was your flying acres contribution that they put in for certain things. So when you look at the O&M, the actual operation maintenance, which would be pretty much stopping mid-page up there, and then you add in some of your other things, as always, and this is a new this year, it's been the ongoing thing, the sewer tends to continue to lag behind. Their costs continue to exceed operational revenues, and I know you've addressed certain areas, I think you've addressed quite adequately the capital improvements, your rate structure, but ongoing operational costs are the 800-pound gorilla out there. They're the ones that are always going up. They're the ones that have to bear the pension increases, the healthcare increases, everything that the district's been hit with. So I would simply recommend that you continue to keep a close eye on your O&M charges, and it's all good things. They'll have to be increased, same as everything in life, with normal type inflationary operational increases. For the other items, as far as the district goes, I think I made a comment on this 2 years ago. It's always refreshing for my staff to come up here. We are very competent people, very qualified professional people. We do about 40 to 50 governmental audits. And this one's a nice one. So take that as a compliment. I can't go into much more detail than that because I'll throw my other ones under the bus. But you should be proud of the jobs that Patty and Jeff do in finance, and the information is very reliable, it's timely, hard to understand. That's just the nature of government. I wish there was some way I could make it simpler, but I'm regulated myself and they keep making things more and more complicated. But if any of you ever have specific questions regarding the pension ramifications, the post-employment benefits, some of the more technical issues, please feel free to call myself and my staff and we'll take whatever times necessary to help you understand.
Jeff
And you'll
didn't
know
pay,
more than I do.
Jeff didn't pay you to say that, right? No.
No, I've seen this for at least 5, 6, 7 years. Sewer's always been kind of a stepchild out there. And your constituents are very sensitive to rate increases, but it's just the nature of life. Your utilities go up, your food goes up, it's just how it happens. So better to be in front of the curve than behind it. I see too many governmental agencies wait too long, and then you have a rate increase. That might get you breaking even at that point, but it doesn't pay for the past 4 or 5 years. We had a deficit, and now I still can't pull ahead. So it's, in my opinion, I've been doing this for enough years, smaller rate increases on a regular basis.
Right.
Are there any questions?
I had I had highlighted, I think we're going back to page 10 or page 11. So bottom line, our net position is $4 million less.
4 million more.
More?
than the prior year. And so that by its sense is a good number, but you have to look back, you see capital R&R fees were almost 4 million. So that pretty much covers it right there. And you could spend a day analyzing the ins and outs and things such as that. Overall, it's a very healthy financial statement. You know, I commend the district on that. But as I look at things, it's always O&M that's the issue out there. People don't mind having rate increases if they think they're going to capital infrastructure, long-term things. It's hard for them sometimes to just realize that operational costs have increased substantially, and that money has to be put in. But like I said, I think you addressed your capital R&R quite well in your rate increase. These things just don't go away.
Well, it was addressed, and, you know, there's been much discussion about whether or not it was the right way or the wrong way, but we did it, yeah.
The Prop 218 and everything you have to go through should give enough input on it, and you go with that. The advantage of being an auditor, I get to come in at the very end and just say things, and then I walk out the door. That's why you're paid big bucks. You have to figure out how to do it. That's a difficult position that you all have.
Yeah.
Mr. Jolly, on Gatsby 68, we're going to be looking at that again in, 2017?
Yes.
Do you see the actuarials as being adjusted upward for longevity and age?
Yes.
In 2017?
Will. The only advantage you have in GASB 68 is I've watched PERS for the last 30, 40 years. It's a very good investment vehicle. And it stays in front of the market. They know what they're doing. And so if the market gets strong, that should help you out substantially. I mean, there was a time back in the 90s, early 2000, PERS did so well that I had certain governments did not make a pension contribution for 4, 5, 6 years. However, they learned their lesson because it collapsed right after that, and we've been paying for it ever since. So that's why, even if we pull ahead, I think Jeff and I were talking about this earlier, PERS will still require the contributions to insure against these dips and things. So it truly is the heel of governmental entities because of the generosity of the PERS program. And that's why private entities has gotten away from the defined benefit plans, gotten more to profit sharing, the SEPI, the IRS, and the deferred 401ks, that type of thing.
So our unfunded liability is actually one of our strengths at this point.
It is not, in my opinion, the unfunded liability is not that big for an agency of your size.
Correct.
Yeah. It's still 6, 7 million. That's a big number. But when they started this, the state of Texas had over $1 billion. I mean, there were many agencies out there. I hate to see LA, San Francisco, they're probably up in that $500 million or whatever.
When I draw comparisons and percentages of the overall to the unfunded liability, even for the county, the percentages here are much better than it would be even for the county.
Yes.
So, and I think you do the counties as well.
I'm not here, not this county.
You do a county though, so you know.
I had another question on GASB 68, which is going to be looking at our unfunded liability. Does CalPERS set the limits on what we need to be investing? Is that, do I understand that correctly?
That's the annual contribution.
Right. So
They're doing their projections way out, and they actually have a phase-in period, which has been computed. So GASB 68 didn't change that, but that unfunded amount that no one ever talked about is now required to be reflected in your statements for transparency reasons.
So that they're looking at what CCWD is worth and projecting out what we're going to have to come up with.
It gets even more complicated than that. You're not standing by yourself. You're in a pool. and they put up to 100 other agencies of your size, similar operations in a pool. And so that's to minimize risk to everyone. And so you're in this pool, and they do all their calculations, but they still look at you and say, based on what you're doing, you need to put X amount in to fund all these people. Hypothetically, let's say 90% of your people died in the next year. Okay, their pension benefits would be reduced substantially, and you could find yourself in an overfunded situation. But that's what they take into account with the mortality and everything. By the same token, everybody could leave it to be 100, and that changes. But being in the side funds or these pools, they mellow those out. I shouldn't do this in a public meeting, but you've always heard what an actuary is. It's a CPA without a personality. So who knows what they do? So they spend their lives dealing with this stuff. It's beyond my head. I'm pretty dry.
The other thing that I think I've said this every time we have an audit report, you give us an unqualified opinion, and that sounds so, that word just doesn't carry a lot as far as I'm concerned. It.
That doesn't sound.
Let's
We're
come up-
overpaid if you're unqualified. I mean,
Yes, it's
Write your congressman or somebody.
Yeah, it doesn't sound positive.
no, not at all.
Tell you a little side story too. If you read the audit opinion, when I was first starting out, I had to write one. My supervisor reviewed it, said, "Oh, this is terrible. Go rewrite it." I happened to be dating an English major, knew how to write, and said, "Help me on this." And she immediately wanted to change everything. She said, "It doesn't make sense." I said, "You can't change that. That's the boilerplate." But that's the problems we have. So I'm restricted. I have to call it qualified.
And you didn't marry her.
No, I didn't. She couldn't correct my English.
Okay. Other comments?
Nope.
Thank you for your detailed work. And Chairman, I move we accept the presentation of the audit report.
Second.
Did you have a,
Staff is recommending you receive and file the fiscal year 2014-15 independent audit as presented by Brian Jolly, CPA.
okay. If I might ask for public comment?
Just want to compliment the board ready to vote on something. You guys must be fantastic. Go through all these numbers and say, hey,
I've seen this for months.
you've seen it, that's great. But you guys must be really great to go through all these numbers and have an opinion about it and do well. Congratulations. Some of us will go through and will express an opinion about down the road.
If I might say, we have, utmost trust in our in our staff and our administrative services.
Man, you're having a fantasy.
Okay.
It was very clear in my mind that I need to spend more time with Jeff to understand a lot of this stuff better but cool.
We are available to provide you any assistance that you need,
And,
both myself and staff.
yeah, and as you know, we've been working on this for months through the Finance Committee. This has
Yes.
been well vetted.
As Brian said, he comes in at the end. We review this as we go through our budget status reports, we go through our R&R reports, claim summaries, and
And
everything
quarterlies.
on a monthly basis. So all this is an accumulation of the data that has been presented over the 12 months. And Brian said the complexity of the report has changed with GASB 68. And it's difficult for me, I'm not an actuary, and as Brian said, they are very dry. I talked to several, we did the GASB 45 actuarial evaluation, and I think in a certain respect, it does a disservice because it muddies up the waters and the numbers a little bit when you throw in all these GASB 45 and GASB 68. But that's why we continue to do our budget status reports and our information, so you, the board, have a good understanding of where we stand.
And yes, in fact, the Finance Committee meets on a monthly basis, and we have readouts of all the aspects of the financial condition of CCWD.
And I would say sometimes painfully so. But that's the learning curve.
Yes.
Putting it together.
Okay. Call the roll, please.
Yes, Director Rattleman?
Yes.
Director Mills?
Yes.
Director Strange?
Yes.
And Director Henry?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board.
Thank you, Jeff.
Item 4B. Consideration of candidates for Division 5 Board Member position. Dave Egerton.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, per the board's direction, we released the notice of vacancy in Division 5. Again, this is a one-year term commencing on noon at December 4th. The current term held by Director Davidson, again, expires in December 4th, and then we have a one-year vacancy. That was because of the consolidation with the general election, the decision made several years ago by the board to consolidate so that we don't have to conduct our special election, or our election cycle is at a different time that makes it more expensive for us. When we can share the cost with consolidated with all the other agencies involved in a consolidated election, it obviously saves quite a bit of money for us. And so that was the desire. And as a result, we had some terms that were a little different than normal, and we had this one-year term. We posted the notice on October 15th for 15 days, according to the requirements under the California law. The period closed with only one applicant. Our existing director, Davidson, was the only person to express interest in the position. And so what we're presenting today, you have two agenda items here sequentially, and I know it's a bit confusing, but the reason we wanted to have two items is to make it very clear that first, the board would accept the application and consider it, so this can be your discussion on the issue. And then with the next agenda item, 4C, the board would actually make the decision, if it desires to do so, to go ahead and make the appointment. And that would be effective at 12:30 on December 4th. And so with that, I turn it back to the board. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer that. I know the original thought was we would have multiple candidates. There'd be an interview process at this meeting today. Since we don't have that, there's really, and the only applicant is somebody who's been on the board for a long period of time, and you, of course, have worked with him for the last year. You pretty much know what his position is and his priorities. So we didn't include the interview process with that today, and obviously Director Davidson isn't here, so it wouldn't have worked anyway. So,
Well, I'm disappointed that Director Davidson isn't here. I was going to give him a little bit of crap about his letter of interest.
Yeah, I was looking forward to the interview.
I know, Terry,
And
sorry.
also would have been nice to interview him as well, yeah. I had some tough questions for him. But the one sentence letter of interest, it doesn't even have the word interest in it. But I don't think, we don't have anything on this really to decide.
No.
Discussion.
no, it's just,
No.
you can, it's open for discussion for the board to discuss the one candidate and his application if you wish.
Okay,
Well, he appears to be qualified.
yeah.
He's a man of few words, but he does care greatly about the job. So.
Since he's not here, we can say whatever we want. And Director
I can't.
Davidson now will go into his
Fifth term.
fifth?
Well, no, this is the middle of an existing term, really. This is
Yeah,
the,
because he'll stand in 2016.
right, he'll be having to run for office in 2016. So this is actually the middle, in part of a.
Extends an existing
Yeah.
term.
Right, but I'm asking how many terms now?
4.
4.
I think he said 16 years, which would be 4 terms. And it was extended because we voted in 2012 to not spend as much money on elections and go to the general elections instead of having it in June sometime.
Did we ever find out how much money we're saved?
By actually
By moving we'll find out now with Jeff being appointed if he is appointed.
Well, that's one of the consideration is if you don't make an appointment, the alternative in which the board decided not to
Right,
for
right.
economic reasons was to hold a special election. And the cost, we don't have an exact number from the recorder's or the voter elections office, but it's in a range of $10,000 to $20,000 to have that special election. But on an ongoing basis, how much we save by consolidating, I forget what the amount is, but I know it's
Substantial.
it's certainly over 10,000. I think it's in the neighborhood of.
10,000 less than 15,000.
Well, thank you. But it's an important, and many agencies have done the exact same thing in our region because, obviously we're trying to cut costs and also you think about it, generally you have a larger electorate to turn out to vote at the general primaries or the general elections, and so, you get more participation.
No, sometimes the incoming directors, it sounded kind of awkward or whatever to extend another year, but it worked out all right because it did, on the whole, save the district money. Back to this fella that we're considering.
This fella.
I came onto the board in 2001 the first time around, and I can remember hearing stories because people run for the board because they're upset about something. And down in the Valley Springs area, when Jeff started, was running, he would attend all of the meetings and get up and talk and just extremely, engaged in what was happening with CCWD. So he didn't just run for CCWD because he thought it was a good place to be. He felt the real cause, and for that reason, Jeff has always been, I can call him a special person in my life. He's been quite engaged and very knowledgeable about a lot of the issues that are going on. And I know when he went to Washington to represent CCWD, he got some good groundwork out of that, dealing with all of our legislators. So he enjoyed that and brought back a lot of information that we were able to subsequently use.
And in President Underhill, speaking from my own experience working with Director Davidson, it's been a great experience. I mean, he's very very supportive. He's very engaged from my perspective, and particularly working with him on the committees in our ad hoc and our standing committees. He's been very engaged in that as well. And so I value what he brings to the board for sure. It's been very helpful to me in doing my job.
Okay, so that we can go from 4B to 4C.
No action required on
Okay,
4B.
well, maybe I could step back and ask for any public comment?
Sure.
I want to congratulate you folks for saving $10,000 to $15,000. It's very nice. As a ratepayers, I really appreciate it. There was not much discussion. How many elections were postponed and appointed from the past couple of years? But nobody ever discussed it. Why did they take place? I realized somebody resigned to be hired by the district at once upon a time, at an inconvenient time, but the district did hire a gentleman, and I'm not questioning his qualification. He was a great person. I met him. But because of that, I believe there's some rule was talked about that if you leave a distinguished post, you're not supposed to have too much business to do with the actual organization. But nobody talks about that, folks. And nobody talks about the number of elections got put off throughout the years since that gentleman resigned to be employed by this district.
Okay, well, we're not,
Ma'am, I'm expressing my opinion.
Keep on
but
point.
It is to the point. It is to this election, ma'am. This is the election and a need for this election. And if anybody don't like it, I got a suggestion what they can do with
well,
their opinion.
no, we don't have
Thank
to
you,
be,
Thank you.
belligerent. We just
No.
are discussing.
I'll be more than happy to discuss it with you, Chairman. Any other things, I resent. Let's get that straight. Thank you very much, ma'am, for the opportunity expressing my opinion. Thank you.
All right. We'll go on with item 4C.
Okay, and members of the board, this agenda item is really to go ahead and make the appointment, consider making the appointment so that this doesn't have to come back to the board in the future, and so there won't be a separation, a gap in terms. And so this is presented to you today. Initially, of course, we were talking about doing interviews, multiple candidates. It might have made sense to hold off on a decision on appointment until you'd had time to review the outcome of the interviews. But again, with one candidate, especially someone who's so familiar to you, the recommendation is to move forward with appointment effective on December 4th at 12:30 p.m. And with that, I'll turn it back to the board.
I'd like to make a motion to do exactly what Dave just recommended.
Second.
Okay.
What's the resolution number, Mona?
2015-59.
Public comment. Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Yes, Director Strange.
Yes.
Director Mills.
Yes.
Director Rattman.
Yes.
And Director Overton.
Yes. Okay, we'll go on to item 4D, which is ratifying the claim summary. Number 524, Secretarial Fund in the amount of $1,893,110.32 for October 2015.
Madam President, members of the board, generally, this claim summary comes to you after we've had an opportunity to review it in the Finance Committee. However, with the board's schedule for the month of November and December, we just have not had that opportunity, so we're coming directly to your board for approval.
Jeff, can we still bring the summary back into the Finance Committee meeting for each month, though? So if there's discussion or some clarifications that are needed, we can still have an opportunity to do those.
Director Mills, it's on the agenda for next Tuesday's board, Finance Committee meeting.
I just, for clarity.
Yes,
that way
exactly.
We'll keep it in the Finance Committee, and this is just a timing issue here, is why it's here.
Exactly,
Right.
and we anticipated that process, so I do have it on the agenda for next Tuesday's meeting, and we'll do it again in December as well.
Excellent. Yeah, I would withhold any discussion until we've had that discussion in Finance anyway.
Okay,
I move we approve the claim summary, number 524.
Second.
seconded by Director Ratterman.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, who did second?
Both of us.
I think that Director Strange seconded, so just for clarification.
And both of us did, that's perfectly
I
fine.
didn't-
Yeah.
Okay.
He has the loudest voice.
He's closer to you.
Oh, that thing.
Okay. Public comment?
There's been some quite heavy travel expenses here. Was that for the DC trip? And there was some big variations of what some people got instead of the other people. I know it's not highlighted in here, but $1,400 travel expenses
Okay.
for some. What was the total? I just-
Excuse me, yeah, you did ask us to
Okay,
supply
if you
that.
please clarify. it,
Yes, we
okay?
will.
So I don't take too much of your time.
Right.
The three individuals and individually how much they cost for the trip. Thank you.
Okay, call for the vote.
Oh, we got
Oh, excuse me.
movement.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm actually moving, how about that? Okay, I just want to make one quick comment. I want to thank staff for acting so promptly on what I mentioned at the last meeting about how the ordinance was worded. And that is the extent of my comment. Thank you.
Okay.
Director Strange?
Yes.
Director Mills?
Yes.
Director Adams?
Yes.
And Director Underhill?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board.
Okay, thank you. Discussion action of consideration of options for videotaping board meetings by Calaveras Public Access Television.
Madam President, members of the board, this is to come back to you with an item that was we discussed in past board meetings, and really to give you some options and really to seek direction from the board on the continuing video recording of our board meetings. One thing that I found when I came in was that we had an arrangement, an agreement with. Not so much a written agreement, but we had an understanding with CCTV, and I'll just refer to I don't know, Ed Lark is I'd like to be able to distinguish. He obviously, just to let I'm sure you guys know, but it was for my own learning experience that Ed and the people who help us with the video recording are actually employed by the county as part of Calaveras Public Access Television. CCTV, the entity, the nonprofit entity, actually, owns a facility there that the Calaveras Public Access Television staff are run and operate and broadcast from. And so that was something for me to learn, was kind of the relationship, and that was really helpful. I want to say at the outset, Ed Lark is just fantastic, and I know probably every one of you feel the same way. You cross paths with him. He's one of the finest people that you could have the pleasure of working with, and he's just fantastic. We spent quite a long time, Mona and I did with him recently, going through all of the arrangement, our agreement, and he had a lot of really great ideas, and his bottom line was, whatever works for the district, and we want to just be a resource to you guys and to provide whatever you need. So again, when I came in, I found that we had an agreement with CCTV, and basically the agreement was a proposal that the past GM had solicited from them to provide this service of the video recording. That was in the fall of 2013, and we've continued to obtain that service since then under the same proposal that was provided by Mr. Lark at that time. We didn't have a written contract per se. I mean, it was I guess you could get into the legalese of it. The contract was the proposal that we accepted, but we didn't have terms and conditions on things like. There are important things like insurance and making sure that, if something happened that, we're protected and those measures are in place. So whatever comes out of this, I'd like to point out that I think we really need to circle back and get that agreement. If we do continue to obtain services from CCTV, I really think that's important that we make sure. I mean, just broadcasting, having the equipment here, if something happens, someone were to get hurt or something like that, I want to make sure that the risks are equitably shared and that there is insurance in place to protect our interests. But what I'm bringing today is a couple of options for you. And I think that, there's certainly, from my perspective at a staff level, I see great value in having the video recording available to the public. I mean, I think it's important that we have a resource available for the public to see what we do. I know most of what we do in these meetings is pretty dry and boring. But there are issues that we get into, just like we've got the one coming up with Calaveras Grown and the watershed restoration issues. There are things that I think that the public would want to know about, and I think it's a good service to be able to provide that to them. But the question is, how do we do that, and what is how much are we going to invest in that financially to make that happen, and what options are available to you? And certainly, if the board desires, we could stop the recording altogether. But I didn't want to bring that as the only option to continue with the same service. I wanted to have something else to present to you. And so, just to give you a little background on where we are with our current agreement, we don't record every meeting. We have, obviously, the professional videographer from CCTV who comes and records the meetings. We don't do them all, just the regular meetings, and that's more of a cost control measure, as I understand it, than anything. That's kind of been our practice since 2013. And we generally spend between $200 to $400 per meeting. And the way that's billed to us under the proposal that we got in 2013 is we pay for the time for the videographer, an hourly rate for them. I believe it was initially about $55 an hour. I think it's come down a little bit now. It's under $50 an hour. And we pay their time to, one, go to the time from when they actually are at CCTV loading the equipment into their vehicle to come here. When they actually set up the equipment, so that time, which there is, obviously there's quite a bit of equipment here. We've got multiple cameras and other equipment to set that up. The time to obviously record the meeting, the time, and then the time to break down the equipment and to take it back and put it back in CCTV. So generally, our cost per meeting, again, $200 to $400. We see on an annual basis our cost is anywhere from $4,000 to $5,000 a year. Since 2013, we've spent just over $9,000 on this service. Again, great service to have access to. Really appreciate what they do for us. Just to note, there are a number of different agencies that this service is also provided to. Other agencies like City of Angels, like the county, and others, the COG. Those agencies, and what Ed explained to me was that one of the primary reasons that they wanted to have this was to have a living record, or not living, but have a video record of the meeting, so that if and when they did get pulled into litigation on different issues that were decided before the board in a meeting setting, that they wanted to be able to have that to be able to use in that, and for their own defense, and to again, to have that clear legal record. The difference really, I think, for some of those agencies, they're handling a number of different, like the county and city, are handling a number of different land use type issues, and actually having to make decisions, on land, on property rights, and what is a authorized use of property under the existing laws of the county or city. And so you things like that, and other things, of course, but those kind of decisions, often can lead to controversy. I mean, many times you've got, as I'm sure all of you have witnessed when you've been in one of the meetings, you've got different issues that come up, and you've got advocates on both sides, and they're making their case, and basically the board would have to be sit as a body to make a decision on it, and that body, and that decision that agency makes can and often is appealed through court. So that again is a primary reason that they wanted to have the video recording, to make sure, have something above and beyond even just an audio recording, and there's really good reason for that, I think. We really don't have the same situation. I mean, it's pretty rare, I think, that our board would be making a decision like that. I mean, there are times, there could be times on personnel issues or something like that that could be brought to the board for a decision, and again, that could be appealed. But most of the business of the district wouldn't typically be in that vein. Our record, just to let you know, what our record is the conformed minutes of our meeting serve as our lasting record of these meetings and the actions that were taken. We do record the meetings. That is, we keep that per our retention schedule, and then those are we only keep them for a certain period of time. We basically use those to again prepare the minutes, the conformed minutes, to come back to the board to make that decision to adopt the minutes. So from that perspective, I don't think we have the same need for the video recording for the record as other agencies may. But again, I do think it is a valuable public service, and so trying to balance the cost, controlling the cost with the desire to be able to provide information to the public. We've come up with a recommendation, or at least it's actually there's no recommendations for the board's decision. It's another option for the board to consider. And that would be to actually, instead of having multiple cameras and having to pay for a videographer's time, we could actually have a fixed camera in the boardroom to provide a video coupled with the audio that we already use. And we could, by taking the audio and the video, we would have a record that we could broadcast on Facebook with a link from our website. And also, to let you know, Ed made it said that it was likely that CCTV would broadcast our meetings with a fixed camera if the audio and obviously the video are good enough quality. And I think the audio on our recording would satisfy that. And so that was something it was good to hear. I mean, I think that's important. There are approximately 12,000 subscribers under Comcast locally who gain access to their to their program. Don't know exactly how many actually watch CCTV. That's an expensive bit of information to gather, so they don't have that. But we do know that there are quite a few homes in the community that do have their access to CCTV. Now, obviously there's going to be a substantial difference. Right now we're fortunate we have 2 cameras. You can, one can pan in on me while I'm speaking. If I get a question from the board, the camera can zoom in on you. I'm sure you've all, watched the video before. You know how it works. One other option would be to try to keep costs down. You could have maybe 1 camera, but the problem there, you're zooming in and across the room, and it's kind of a dizzying effect. It would be, trying to capture each speaker. So Ed thought that probably wasn't something that we would be very interested in. Lastly, just let you know that we would have the opportunity, and Ed and I discussed this, if we wanted to purchase our own equipment. Right now we get the equipment is included within the hourly rate. So the additional cost is that we're paying on an ongoing basis for the setup and the breakdown and the transport of this equipment back and forth. But the reality is the cost of this equipment, well over $1,000 for each camera, plus other costs. It probably wouldn't be worthwhile for us to actually buy the equipment and then just pay for the videographer's time here at the meeting. So that was also considered, but that's not something that I would think would make much sense for us. And then again, we'd have the obligation of trying to maintain it and staff time to take it down, put it up, and everything else. Instead, what is here for you to consider is an option to have a fixed camera. This is a still shot of what that would look like. The camera would be mounted, say, basically in the vicinity of where that screen is there, and would have a still shot. You don't get you don't have the same ability to zoom in on a speaker. There could be times when someone's speaking and it might not be readily apparent who the speaker is. But you can see everything that is happening in the room, and you would have the audio coupled with that. The benefit of this arrangement, if we can do it, and likewise if we can make sure that we can do it with CCTV's ability to continue broadcasting, would be that we would only have to make an initial expenditure, approximately just under $1,000 for the camera and the equipment to connect it, and then we would be done with that, and we wouldn't have the ongoing costs that we do now. So it would be an ongoing savings to the district that we would realize in pretty short amount of time, and we would have the ability to record all of our meetings as well. So we could do all the special meetings if we did any kind of workshops, if we even had any kind of meetings of other groups that we wanted to capture and make that available. That would be an option for us as well. So there's some other advantages there, but again, the disadvantage would be not being able to zoom in, and it would be a different visual that we would be providing to the public. So again, I personally can see benefits and reasons to go with either direction. I do think something that our auditor spoke to this morning about the ongoing increased cost due to inflation over time with O&M, and that concern. I'm very fond of anything we can do to try to lessen our cost, and if we have this opportunity with this, that's why we seriously explored it at this time. So with that, I'll turn it back to the board.
Okay. So if I'm hearing you right, the option for change would be a camera mounted on the wall, $1,000 approximately for the purchase, one time cost for the district, and that video audio. Well, the audio is already here, and the room's already audio fed. So we just have the cost for the video camera, and that would be put. It would be put on our website, and CCTV would be able to still broadcast that. I know we would have it on our website. So the way we have a link on our website to Facebook, we would definitely have it there, and that would be available as soon as we started this. So there wouldn't be any interruption on that side. Now on the CCTV side, obviously it's they're going to they get to make the decision on that. But the initial conversation with Ed was he thought that would probably work.
That again, if the video and the audio is of good enough quality, that he would likely put that on their television.
Okay.
Because not everything that's on CCTV is recorded by CCTV.
Mm-hmm.
You have other tapes coming in of different presentations, so that, that would be not an issue. I would be wondering if we could do a parallel just to see how the new and the old would go. Is there that kind of an opportunity?
Well, the only challenge there is that we'd have to purchase the camera to find out what, and I'm with you, President Underhill. I would love nothing more than to give, let's do this kind of as a test run while we continue to provide it as we do, so that we can see exactly what it would look like. But again, we can't do that unless we actually purchase it. I guess. It wouldn't take very many meetings of using the fixed camera to have paid for it.
Absolutely.
And then if we decided, hey, there are certain meetings maybe we want to continue to have CCTV here for, as opposed to using the fixed camera, I guess that option would remain open to the board for sure.
Okay, I'll go to my left.
Yeah, I think that one of my concerns all along was that not everybody in this county receives the CCTV. And so those, essentially for those people that don't subscribe or have that access, then it would be going to our website and downloading it in another format. And so, personally as a cost savings, I would favor this type of the alternative, the recommendation of having one fixed camera with the audio. I think that, the long-term savings is significant. And then also, essentially, we would put that on, our website, or if CCTV wanted to do that, fine, but we'd have it on our website similar to what's there now, and folks can come to our website to get access for that. I think that if people start seeing that and, over time, realizing that's the way to access our, videoed meetings, that I think it'll reach a lot more people.
Dave, you said something about, in your report, about operated by staff.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
have you had any thought to the estimated staff cost per hour that it would take? Because you're going to need to download it, you're going to need to manipulate to some degree.
I think, and Director Moses, great point. This option would be trying to minimize the staff time as much as possible. So it would basically be someone would turn on the camera, push a button, turn it on when the meeting started, and turn it off when we're done. And then that recording would be handled just as we handle our video recording together. So, we don't anticipate much additional staff time to make that happen. But again, that's kind of the other side of this, is you get the fixed image, but it does minimize the time that we or somebody else that we pay to actually have to capture the picture.
Have you thought about the cost, the setup cost?
Setup cost for this
To getting it
option.
set up and wired in and...
That's what I think the camera itself is in the range of $800. I'm expecting some additional cost probably to make the connection, but again, I think it's less than $1,000. I think is what we're looking at.
That's something that our IT can handle?
Yes,
This
John Combs
mounting,
has
yeah,
been helping me with this, and
mounting of the camera.
the camera would be a high definition camera, 1920 by 1080 format. I'm frankly no expert. I don't have much knowledge of what that means, except to say that that's why we would be paying over $800 for the camera. It wouldn't be it's not going to be something like an Instamatic or something. It's going to be it's that while the picture may be a distance back, I think it will be still be a good quality picture.
Not everybody has public access television, I understand that, but also not everybody has internet. And our older folks, especially those that are retired, are a little bit technically challenged, so to speak. So if the internet was their only option, we may lose them. Mm-hmm. But the feedback that I get in my district is this is valuable because many of them can't get to meetings, or they're working and they can't get to meetings, so they do tune in. I get the feedback consistently so the videos are important for them. I just any way that we can do this and give them the best quality as possible is the win.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, because it does become their TV of choice to watch the board meetings, the county and CCWD, it's very important to them. And I know that initially that was the reason that we talked about filming of the board meetings years ago, and so I was glad when it came to fruition. One of the things that I do like is the fact that the camera would be positioned so that the stand would be in it, and so of course people coming up under public comment would still be recognizable, and they would identify themselves if they so choose, and so they will be aware of what's happening. And then you have the two over there, and then Mona and whoever sits there. So that's perfectly adequate.
Yeah, we always have the option too, like you say, of bringing CCTV in for
On
special
uh-huh.
occasions and all, yeah.
That's a good thought.
Yeah, and in light of our desire to be as transparent as possible, I think continuing videotaping and having full audio and video of all of our meetings is important, and I think it is a great solution and a cost-cutting effort. I'd like to move with a motion to purchasing the set camera, and with the idea that audio video combination would be on our website and available to the entire public as quickly after the meeting as possible.
Director
we
Mills,
do a-
you started to say something, did you want to? Okay.
Do we need a motion, or can we just take, you said direction from the board?
Yeah, this is actually for direction by the board, and it's, and I guess, that could take verbal direction or a motion.
Yeah.
But, I just want to make sure that whatever I'm doing is consistent with the desires of the board.
I'm for it.
Okay.
And Scott?
Yeah, I'm for a fixed mounted camera, similar to what you show here on the screen as far as its ability, and also I don't, the resolution, we can look at it, and if there's issues, we may have to modify a few things to get it, perfect or best acceptable to the most people.
Is there a future on split screen if needed?
You mean, do they have like a zoom in as well?
Well, I know in some cases they do modify with a little corner square and a split screen where you can have one particular spot, like the podium right there.
That's an interesting idea.
Just thinking about it for the future.
But you would need two cameras.
Yes, you would.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
correct.
maybe a
But
second.
that's something to discuss
Yeah,
later.
still mounted another $800.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably similar labor.
And I would, I want to be clear myself that this, by seeking this direction from the board, there's an understanding that we would be able to put this on CCTV and it would continue to be broadcast. I'm going to clarify that. I want to make sure that it's make sure that's absolutely correct, and so we'll follow up with Ed. If for any reason that's different, I will not purchase the camera, and I will instead revisit this with the board. I think that's very important part of this, and again, it's going to be a different experience for people watching, and it may take some time to adjust. But I want to make sure that this continues to be available to them on that.
No, I keep hearing about the upgrades to our website and the fact that more people are becoming drawn in, and the fact that you do have it linked to Facebook is very, very important to the people who can sit there and access Facebook.
Are we able to monitor hits on that, Joel?
Yes, we are.
So you're keeping track?
And I also want to say, I travel around and go to a few different water district or water agency, and there's a lot of them that do not provide the video of their meetings. And so, having said that, I think it's a direction that we need to continue.
Yeah, well, as I said, it was a long time coming, and it happened in 2013, so, thank you.
And public comment?
You're fine. Okay, if I might just... public comment.
I thank the board for considering this issue, and I want to compliment you. It's a great step toward open and transparent legislation, if you want to call it. I also would hope that you will consider videoing your committee meetings also. I think the public would like to see how the minor details gets taken care of so they can fully appreciate all the work you folks doing. And those committee meetings could be very interesting. And it would be a lot easier and convenient if you do it instead of having a private party come in and videoing it. Thank you.
Okay, if I might call a 10-minute break, please.
You didn't want to vote first? We don't need a vote. We didn't have a motion.
Yes, I'm trying to herd the cats. Yeah, herd the cats. Okay. If we can reconvene, please. Item 4F.
Madam Chair, right now I don't have a conflict of interest. I don't anticipate having a conflict of interest regarding this particular topic, but I am an expert in erosion and sediment control. I live in the watershed, and so I'd like to recuse myself and step outside, and when this agenda item is complete, if somebody can come and get me, I'd appreciate it, just so that there's no apparent or perceived or any sort of potential conflict of interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. It's strange.
Okay. Members of the public running in mountains. All right. Thank you, Madam President. Remaining members of the board, this agenda item is to request a contribution to the efforts of Calaveras Grown in dealing with the effects of the fire and protecting the soils within the Calaveras River watershed, particularly as we continue to see the effects of runoff and with the rainy season. I want to note that we have members of Calaveras Grown here today. That I thank you for coming. Appreciate it. I want to give them an opportunity to speak. This is really an incredible effort you guys have done. I've got to say it's a volunteer effort. They're a group of of local agriculturists whose basically their mission is improving the quality of life for the rural community, and certainly they get working with the soil as they do for their livelihood. How important it is to preserve our landscape as we see the effects of the burn and what happens afterwards. As I noted in the agenda report, there has already been a study through the California Natural Resources Agency with a whole multitude of different departments under that agency that came out and assessed the watershed and the burn area, the severity, and the potential effects of erosion. And it is a serious issue. We certainly, in the heart of the burn area where we saw the intense fire and the loss of almost all vegetative matter, in the Calaveras watershed, there is a great risk of, seeing a lot of that sediment end up in the creeks and river, and ultimately into our reservoir, New Hogan Reservoir downstream, which of course is a water supply for us and serving our community, and then as well to Stockton East Water District, who also relies upon that water supply to meet the municipal and agricultural needs. The effects of the burn, certainly the high intensity burn areas, can see hydrophobic soils where there's a chemical reaction to the soil and it no longer absorbs and instead repels water, and we see more flow across the land. Also more debris coming in, with all of the burn material and, the different chemical compounds within that. Those things, in addition to more sediment, as you see erosion with the hillsides, and a lot of these are, steep areas that are very vulnerable to erosion. And the stream course itself can be exacerbated by coming out of the fire, and and particularly looking at a possible El Nino year, it is very very disconcerting to think what can happen to our watershed. And again, a lot of that could end up downstream in our reservoir. The impacts to us could be increased sedimentation, which reduces the storage capacity in the reservoir. That could be a long-term process. Just anecdotally, I know on in our Ebbs Pass system, we're still seeing the effects of burns that are more than 10 years old in the quality of water that reaches our plant. So the sedimentation within the reservoir, the turbidity that we would see in the water that we take immediately downstream, the raw water that we take out of the river, and also additional metals, additional chemicals, more debris, just a host of different things that deteriorated water quality that we would have to and are certainly going to have to deal with whether or not this effort goes forward. I mean, this is a incredible effort of volunteers, again, to do things like putting straw down on bare ground to try to protect it from erosion. But the reality is with 50+ thousand acres burned in our watershed, we are going to see some very serious consequences potentially this year and again for years to come. And so one of the strategies, and thankfully we've got this effort and dedicated people that are spending their time, their spare time to make this happen, is certainly to deal with the area burned. And that's something that we're bringing to you today. I thank you very much, gentlemen, for bringing this forward to me, to make this request. I think that, I wish I had so much more to recommend to the board in the way of an effort to support this. But given the incredible need, unfortunately with fiscal constraints, and our just the resource constraints in a rural community, we're going to have to try to work together and try to leverage other resources. And so the request that's being made today, and this is a request to contribute $5,000 to this effort, that's really just kind of the beginning. What I really want to do is and I've talked to Mr. Mines about this, is to help them try to leverage other federal and state grants to the extent we can. I mean, we know that's got to be an important source of resources to make this happen, to do it in a really large scale way that we need to see happen in the watershed. So that's part of what our ongoing effort will be to help them identify and secure those grants. And hopefully in some small way, what we can contribute financially will help with that as a matching contribution. I've also been informed by Stockton East Water District. They're very interested in the board's action today and would likely look to match whatever we're doing. They're very concerned about this as well, obviously, given the impacts to New Hogan Reservoir. So with that, I would like to ask Rick and...
I really hope you guys could be generous, but Sean is the director of the project.
You bet, and Sean, yes.
And let Sean Krolitich.
Sean Krolitich, and Sean, I apologize. I didn't want to butcher your name, so I didn't. But again, thank you.
Thank you for hearing our plea. Actually, not for help, but for you to invest in your own resources and follow the mission that's posted behind you. This is really about protecting the watershed, and I want to add, I think that Dave just gave a very nice introduction to what's going on here in terms of the water quality issues downstream, sedimentation of the reservoir. We're also, the work we do also helps in a humanitarian way. But the other thing is that this is a historic fire in the amount of private land that was burned. So as far as I'm aware, never before in the history of California has so much private land burned in a single fire. And so normally when a fire happens of this size, these have only been quote unquote normal for the last 5 to 10 years of this size. Let's not forget that the Old Gulch fire is all still in our minds as an enormous catastrophe, and that was 17,000 acres. So the scale of these fires is very different than it was 20 or 25 years ago. And now that this fire consumes so much private land, the issue with that is that there's really no government assistance for private landowners to control erosion on their land. And that means that it's really up to us, the community, the public agencies involved, the local control to control erosion on that land, so we can not only regenerate the forest, keep the people on the land, which is important to all of us, whether they're your ratepayers or people that are purchasing produce or other products produced in Calaveras County, or just being part of the local economy in general. And then, so we need to protect the soil where it is, to keep the forest coming back, keep the people where they are, to keep this land tended, and hopefully with the recognition that we cannot let this happen again. So this 71,000 acres is just the beginning of the work that needs to be done in terms of cleaning up the forest, so that this doesn't continue to keep happening to us. And then finally, and most importantly, I think for CCWD, is protecting, enhancing the water quality, and making, one of the unfortunate issues here is that Hogan Reservoir being almost empty as it is right now, this sediment is actually going to go mostly up against the dam. And so just to now I'm going to go back to what our response as Calaveras Grown has been. We understood as agriculturalists, and I'm a trained geomorphologist, we understood just a week into the fire that this was going to be a serious issue. When we see the severity of the burn, the intensity of the burn, and really there's no leaf litter left on the ground in many of the places. Some 60 to 70% of the total burn area is truly devastated, and is not going to be coming back anytime soon. And so our response was to hold an emergency meeting at of the Calaveras Grown Board and see what we're going to do as a small organization to sort of work on mitigating all the issues that I just named. And so we started this, we started bringing in rice straw. We used our connections, and we continue to use our connections in the agriculture and trucking industries to bring in certified weed-free rice straw. We, of course, don't want to import noxious weeds into our environment, especially when we have this kind of opportunity to start with a bit of a clean slate in that regard. And so we've been importing that rice straw. To date, we put almost 10,000 bales on the ground and made that accessible for the local residents to use in erosion control and controlling, making sure their driveways don't slip away. And let's not forget that that's not only their driveway, but when their driveway slips away, that's putting additional toxins, additional sediment into our waterways. And so I would think that that's of strong and important concern to the water agency, to the water district. And then, so we've been going, actually, basically have an enormous list of people that are, that want help. And we're prioritizing that based on the severity of the burn there, their proximity to creeks and tributaries of creeks, and to how steep the hillsides are that were severely burned there. Because in terms of controlling erosion and keeping sediment out of the waterway, the most critical areas are the most severely burned areas on the steepest hillsides. So we're really, we want to take responsibility. We're working with a group of actually in total about 60 volunteers, but we have already worked on I think it's 15 different properties so far. Only one of those was in the Mokwalamy River watershed, and that we were actually, in that case, just learning how to use, getting some expert advice from East Bay Mud on using a straw blower has now been purchased and donated to our organization to improve the efficiency of our efforts in spreading straw. And we're working 2 to 3 days a week with volunteer crews spreading straw. Just the other day, we were out at a place on Hoover Road, very steep environment, extremely severely burned, really nothing left living on the land. The people themselves are living in a small, basically what a cheap portable carport. On their land. They were uninsured at the time of this disaster. And let's not forget that many people were not uninsured because they didn't want to pay, but because they could not get fire insurance. And so, we can't place any blame on people for that. We're connecting them with other resources. I mean, they didn't even have a camp stove for cooking out there. And so on top of actually controlling erosion, we've been doing both spreading straw and then contour log falling. So we're taking the dead trees and setting them up on contour on the steeper slopes so that they provide sort of a micro terrace system that slows the water down and traps the sediment as it flows into the ravines. We've also been creating what's known as debris catches or silt screens in those cannot legally be done in creeks, but they can be done on side channels and in the smaller tributaries or of very seasonal streams, and to try to trap that sediment as high up on the hill as possible, keep it out of the culverts, keep roads from washing out, and the like. And the other big thing that it does is, for the people that we work with, those places we work at, is that it really can kind of bring them some hope and change their perspective and hopefully keep them here in our community, which to me as a local business owner is an extremely important aspect of the recovery from this massive disaster that I really hope we'll learn from, and learn that we need to clean up the forest, all of the forest, and that we need to all work together to seek the funding, figure out the funding mechanisms that are going to allow that to happen. Because if we don't, we're going to keep seeing this kind of devastating fire and keep having these issues. And like your general manager here pointed out, we're going to see sediment in Hogan no matter how much work is done. But the more work we can do with the sooner, the better. The less sediment we're going to see in Hogan, the better water quality, the more soil we're going to keep up there on the hills where it belongs, and the quicker the forest is going to regenerate and be able to do that cleaning function that it provides. I also want to point out that the forest not only cleans the water after it hits the ground, the forest also is well known scientifically to catalyze rainfall. So it actually compresses the storms as they come in off the Pacific Ocean. The pollen and dust from the forest actually interacts with those storms to create catalyzing particles for rainfall. And so with less forest, over the long term, we'll also receive less rainfall. And while there's not a lot of data on it for this particular region, in many areas of the world there are. And so loss of forest also means loss of future rainfall, which is of course not positive for any of us. This is currently all a volunteer effort. We're seeking funds from foundations, private donors, from anyone and everyone we can think of all over the world, actually. We think this is a worldwide issue, in part because, maybe not so much here in Calaveras County, although that's part of Calaveras Grown's mission, is to enhance agricultural production and profitability here in Calaveras County, so we're working towards that as well. But the water that comes out of Hogan Reservoir quite literally feeds the world. The agriculture around Lodi and Stockton is very important worldwide. So we're working to control erosion. We have the crews and the machines to work on this. We have the technical expertise to work on this, and we're asking for your investment today in protecting and enhancing this watershed. And, it's unfortunate that the place that we need to enhance it from now is a very devastated place. I just want to point out that obviously we can't go back, but it would have been much easier and much cheaper to enhance this watershed before this happened. And so let's think about that for the future. Obviously, we can't go back in time, but we can learn. We are, reasonable humans, and we can learn for the future. So we hope to do at least 100 more properties. We're working with USGS. We're working with the folks at BLM and the Natural Resource Conservation Service. We're looking at what East Bay Mud is doing, and we're also pushing as hard as we can on them to do more in their watershed. But honestly, we're much more interested in working in the Calaveras watershed. It's where most of the homes were lost. It's where most of the people who live here, it's where most of the inhabitants that were extremely impacted by this fire live. And so we're interested in helping the community as a whole, because this is really the work that we're doing is not only erosion control and water quality control, it's also about helping people in a humanitarian way and hooking them up with the resources that they need, and that sort of change of scenery. Because if you haven't been out there on Jesus Maria on Haver Ranch Road, please go out there. Get out there and see what happened. And it really doesn't even look half as bad as it did when it first happened. Right now, because most of the ash has been cleaned up by the rain. Let's remember that cleaning just put the ash into our water supply, and we need to do all that we can to mitigate that issue. So we'd really appreciate you kind of surprising us with your generosity. But in reality, I think just like most things, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So the more resources we can put into this now, the less money we're going to have to spend on it later. And the more people we'll keep here, the more people we can get to understand that we need to really tend to this land in order to live here in a healthy and safe way. So thank you for listening to me today.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, I didn't quite understand, you used a word catalyze,
Yep.
and I didn't quite understand.
Okay, so a catalyst is something that aids in something else happening.
Oh, okay, well, yeah, I understand
Right.
that, but
Okay, so basically one of the reasons, like for example, that it's often foggy in, smoggy really, but it's most of it's actually fog in major cities in the world is because of pollutants. Right? And the reason why that the pollutants actually are catalysts for water to condense around them. And therefore you get with more pollutants in the atmosphere, you get more fog. It's also true that in natural systems, when you have forests emitting pollen and dust as the wind blows through them, those essentially, while maybe they shouldn't be called pollutants, that's why I call them catalysts. They go up into the mid-atmosphere and interact with the storm in such a way that the water droplets condense around them. So it can be that those catalyzing agents can actually really increase the amount of rainfall that happens in, this is something that might take, a year of college courses to fully grasp. But the fact is that forests bring rain. And so, a sort of a ancient, all the way up to modern times, an example is the country of Greece. Greece has been deforested for a long period of time. It basically doesn't rain there anymore. The Mayans actually essentially destroyed their civilization before Cortez and the other Spaniards ever arrived, because they deforested the Yucatan Peninsula and most of Guatemala, and it basically didn't rain there for about 150 years. So it's very hard, as you know, as we all know, just as this drought has shown us, it's very hard for people to live without water. And you know, we really can't do it. It's one of our essential needs, and the forest is a big part of bringing that water to us and cleaning that water for us.
So, you know, we had the fire, and as a result, those catalysts that are going to produce that water are gone.
Right.
Okay.
So you may take the average person a full year to study, but Bertha picked it up in a matter of seconds.
Well, exactly. I mean, I knew that would happen.
Thank you, fella.
Yeah.
I do have some questions
Yeah.
for you. And that is that the county's identified over 700 properties within the burn area here. And for your group, are you looking at this as a 1-year project, a 5-year project? What kind of time frame are you in?
We're actually looking this at probably around a 3-year project. So while the sooner the better, we know that we really aren't going to, you know, even if we're working on it with 10 crews every day, we're not going to get to the scale that's needed before the real rains start falling, and hopefully they do, of course. So then the other thing to know is that what we've learned from other situations, other severe fires, is that the real issues are, while the first year can be very bad, the debris flows, mudslides, bigger events, bigger erosive events are actually in the second and third year as the roots of the trees start to rot away. And then there's actually absolutely nothing holding that soil to a deeper level, and we'll start to see with that, if left unmitigated, we can start to see massive erosion events happen.
I just wanted this in the discussion that maybe we're looking at a budget item here for next year and a continuing contribution rather than something as a one-time event.
Yeah.
The other thing is the PRC 4290 Public Resources Code deals with a 16% slope, and there's a lot of the slope out there that's way and above 16%. As those soils become sterile, and much of it is, this is a long-term event. As you said, it's going to take literally generations to recover. I know that Jeff Krovitz is working with the county on a chipper system. Is that something that you might be able to incorporate in what you're doing as well?
Certainly. So one of the things we're doing now is we're putting together, so we've raised, I'll just say that yes, we do want to get into that. We're even looking at wood straw, and even thinking about for the longer term a wood straw facility that would make wood straw, which has been shown to be one of the optimal materials for use in controlling erosion. But for now, we're on the verge of purchasing a chipper. We're just a short dollar amount away from being able to purchase an actual chipper that can do the job, because one of the things to remember is that this isn't just your normal wood. It's actually been hardened by this fire event. And so it's gonna take a pretty serious machine to chip that up. Actually, tree crews normally avoid chipping burnt material. So it dulls the blades very fast. But yeah, we want to not only be going along the roads and anywhere we can drive with the straw blower and blowing straw onto these steeper areas, but in the very steep areas and anywhere where we have the material, we want to be going along and actually chipping this material onto the ground. And one of the beneficial things about that is that woody material is actually the material that the mycorrhiza, the fungal component of the soil, that really is what feeds the forest. It's essentially the fertilizer for the long-term fertilizer for the forest. That needs to get back on the ground as soon as possible so that mycorrhiza can be revived and the forest in turn can recover itself. So yes, we are looking at chippers. The county's looking at chippers. I'm talking to both environmental health and both Jeff and Jason at least once a week. We're trying to work together as much as possible. And I just want to stress that this is, unfortunately, it's like Jeff told me, I don't have any money for this until the debris flows start happening, until it's an emergency. And, that's very similar to what just happened in this fire. There was no money to clean up the forest, and then all of a sudden there's a bunch of money to put the fire out, which thankfully so. But wouldn't it be nice to have our forest, have it cleaned up, have these 548 homes, have people's lives back, and have probably paid 10% of what it cost to put the fire out to make that possible? I mean, this fire probably could have been stopped at the Mokwalami River if we were living in a sane world where the priorities were actually put, first and foremost on things that, and we know wildfire is going to happen. There's catalysts. Again, there's things that start wildfire. Any of us could, on our way home right now, luckily it's rained enough, have our engine overheat or something on the side of the road and have a car fire, and those start fires too. So, but yeah, we are looking at chippers. I also just wanted to say that valued at between $15 and $25 an hour, which is depending on the work that was being done. We've already put over $50,000 of volunteer time on the ground. Calaveras Grown has raised over $50,000, most of which is in donations of 50 to 100. I mean, some of them are bigger than that, but most of them are relatively small donations, literally hundreds of donations. And so we're working as hard as we can on this, and we would love your support. We'd love to, get involved with grants or other long-term funding mechanisms, because of course we're aware that we can't shoulder this. We know we can't shoulder this all ourselves. We also need a program coordinator. I mean, so I'm here today on a volunteer basis. I've been doing all of this. I've been working since October 1st on this, some 50 plus hours a week. Luckily, it's kind of a slow time for me on the farm, and I gave up a couple other of my consulting opportunities to be able to do this, but I won't be able to do that forever. So having a program manager, we need to have people in this county, in this community, looking for funds, putting volunteers together, putting resources together, and really, I'd love to see us all work together as a community to create a model for what other neighborhoods can do in these events, and hopefully to expand that out to beyond this 71,000 burned acres and say, hey, let's not let this keep happening. Let's make it possible for the firefighters to put the fires out in a reasonable amount of time.
I had a question. I know that you're doing all the fundraising and, in different areas and out of the county, as a matter of fact.
Yes.
You're having it done. Are you going after agencies to put you as a line item? Because we're talking about doing that again, including you, possibility of including you in our budget next year. Are you approaching other agencies in?
Yeah, we've already, certainly, that's where we started with the county, and, we're working on that with Stockton East Water District. And I'd like to point out that they said they would match any investment that CCWD made in this, and we're going to push hard to make that match proportional. As they are a much, much larger agency,
Government agencies will not fund private volunteer efforts. The National Resource Conservation Service, FEMA, OES, and they're not going to fund. It's going to have to be private foundations, water districts, local agencies that are going to come through, and I look forward to funding jointly with you. But I don't think we can expect, Bertha, for federal agencies to be funding volunteer efforts. They might have a contract, but they're not going to put it in as a line item very easily. I think we're going to have to do a lot of work before we get that.
We're talking about the access to grants. you know, will they be able to fulfill any of your needs?
For the grants. Again, I just want to stress the historic nature of this fire in terms of the amount of private land devastated.
Right.
CAL FIRE and CCC crews cannot work on private land after the fire is 100% contained. The federal government and state governments cannot directly contribute to improvements on private land the way current law is structured. So while we've explored these avenues, I spent 4 years as a farm advisor with the University of California Cooperative Extension in this region. And so I'm pretty familiar with the government programs, NRCS programs, even the programs that we could get. We don't have an RCD here, but we're
Right. Well,
that's a
that was
possibility.
another thing that
I
we,
was just going to bring it up
Yeah,
because it's
yeah.
one of my pet projects.
Uh-huh,
It's a whole, and because we don't have an RCD, we don't have access to a lot of that for the public-private partnerships that are so critical at this timely moment.
That's
And
correct.
so
but Monday night at LAFCO,
Monday night at LAFCO, you'll have an opportunity to speak.
Right. Well, and so, but as unfortunately the RCD, I believe the only county in the state that doesn't have an RCD.
Three.
But there's 3. Okay, great. Not great, but
San Francisco County.
one of the things. That will have to go to a vote of the people. Even if we do all the work to get there, and that may not be the easiest thing. That's a long road to an RCD. And honestly, we have help from the Amador Resource Conservation District. We're losing funding for sure by not having one, but we are where we are. This happened. We're in the situation that we're in. We're relatively unprepared, and honestly, state and federal agencies are relatively unprepared for this kind of a disaster on private land. And so I just think that we as the community need to step up. It's about the people in this community caring about this community. It's about the agencies here caring about this community. And we need to, find inventive ways to bring in outside money. We're doing that. And we want to keep doing that, and we want to hear all the ideas around that and all the action around that. But just to remember that basically, the county, obviously the county isn't a rich, entity anyway, and they're bound by law to to certain things. And because this hadn't happened before, the regulations, the sort of the assistance mechanisms aren't in place. I'd like to point out that the county is applying for a KMEG grant, but it's mostly going to work on BLM lands. And then this first case anyway will be in the McQualmie watershed. So I'm hoping that Jeff's idea that this would just be the beginning of that is true, but honestly I'm a little concerned that particular $480,000 will be the last money we see from that, and we'll be left on our own in the Calaveras watershed.
I would like to thank you and Calaveras Grown. I've heard your presentation before the Board of Supervisors, and the amount of time and I'd say the intensity with which you're taking on this project is very timely. I think the county as a whole should appreciate that effort, and I do thank you for it.
Thank you.
I'd like say a couple words on. I do agree with Director Mills' point about going forward, possibly a budget item for us going forward on this effort. I would like to see this effort, going forward for the next 3 years, and hopefully that you do get the funding. Because it will be more necessary next year and the following year, and it's not something, it's right in our wheelhouse. This is our most important resource. This is the resource that we are here for. We're put in this position to look out for this resource, and this goes directly to that. I mean, it's not hard to see how dirt in the water affects water quality and all the things that come with the dirt. That's what I did. I think this is a great idea, and I applaud your efforts, and hope you can, the both of you can maintain your, your efforts as they are today, hopefully into the future.
Can I just say
Yeah.
that, excuse me, Sean, that really is exciting that you'd be willing to put it on as a medium term, or long-term idea. And I think that might have an impact on Stockton East, because we can, because they've already committed to meeting whatever you do. So if you,
But I like
Make
the
that-
word that Sean used,
Yeah,
proportionately. Tell them, emphasize
They
proportionately.
have 300,000 users plus the Merced irrigation district.
Right.
Which is, produces mega, output. And you have what, 12,000?
12,000.
Users, so that it's, 20 times as big or something. So, yeah, that would really help if you could.
I hope they understand what matching really means.
Yeah,
No,
we'll
you-
remind them of that.
Yeah, you prepared a succinct budget, in the handout, yeah.
Yeah, we sent the complete budget was for 50 days of work. And it's near $500,000 for 50 days is work, volunteers are not free. You got to give them lunch, you got to pay for their gas, it's a volunteer effort, but it's not free. And it costs a lot of money to fight erosion under these circumstances.
Yeah, when I went back to talk to the gentleman, just to welcome, and we started talking about that, and Sean clearly pointed out, exactly, that's what we're all about.
Yeah, and
Yes.
Mr. Ratterman also emphasized that, so I thank you guys for actually taking the responsibility that you took when you agreed to, run and take this position, because you're in an important place in our community and carry a lot of responsibility. The one final thing I just wanted to say is it's not just Rick and I that are working hard on this. There's a half dozen other core members of the Calaveras Grown organization that are pretty much working full time on this particular effort. We're pretty passionate about it, and for what we've helped build over the last 15 years of Calaveras Grown's existence, we don't kind of want to let that erode away either.
Because what you bring is another opportunity for us to do collaboration, because we talked about, we're doing a lot of that with all the water agencies here in, we've reached out to the agricultural, or the farming, and so here's Calaveras Grown, and we love it, and we'll continue to do that.
I'd like to see you as part of that Highway 4 corridor
Yeah.
discussion here in the near future and have your input in it. We could reach out and get your email address so that you can come up to speed with the discussions that we've been having. I think you're an integral part of what our future is going to look like.
Great.
With that, Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a
Thank you.
motion to approve the request for assistance, support the efforts of Calaveras Grown.
Okay?
Do we need a motion on this, or just?
Yes,
Okay, yes.
Okay,
Second, definitely
second,
second. Yes.
okay. Okay, I need public comment.
Don't look at me with that tone of voice, man. I'm gonna be nice. I wanna thank these folks, okay, really, and I really support them. Suggestion, right now, the county deals with the Board of Supervisors, state, federal, and they try to cooperate. Hopefully, I know you made a presentation. I like the idea. When this comes up to LAFCO, I think it's a great idea. It's about way past time. You mentioned Jesus Maria Road over there. There was a special presentation because that was very hard, ticklish area when they're really having a problem. And I'm glad you mentioned collaboration. It's about time. That's very nice. I would like to maybe consider, next time you send out a bill, now you should have a little bit more space on that bill, because, or put an additional, give people an opportunity when they pay their bill, how much they want to contribute, and put it toward the bill. It shouldn't be any hard, because it goes to a good cause. I'm sure most of your constituents will be more than happy to. And just ask the public, hey, put $10, $20, $50, $100,000, whatever, for this particular issue. Give people an opportunity, but they might be more in a generous mood than you folks are. Not that you folks are not generous. We can go into details later. But
No, that's
it costs, I don't know how much it would cost you, but you can
if we round it up.
multiply it.
Yeah,
Multiply it, give people an opportunity. Hey, put an extra $20, $50 in what you bill.
I have
And
another.
that is being
idea.
generous.
Yeah, you,
Thank you.
you reminded me of something else that's done at the county.
Hope it's nothing bad.
At the county level, what is it, with our tax bill? They also have a sheet in there for funds, for foster children, or maybe getting something included, maybe getting one included in that. Okay, so, any other public comment? All right, then,
Director
Call for-
Mills?
Yes.
Director Rademan?
Yes.
And Director Underhill?
yes.
Madam President, with the next agenda item, that I would ask if we could have that item trail after the closed session.
Bring Director Strange in.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
No, this is nice with him in that room.
I hear him mumbling. He must be talking on the phone in there.
What is the problem
doing
with
in
that?
I thought you got locked in.
What is the problem with that door?
Welcome back, Terry. We were talking about you.
Yeah, well, my ears were burning, no.
Okay. Authorization for filing petitions for extension of time with State Water Resources Control Board for various water right permits. Peter Martin.
Madam President, as I just mentioned, we should have this item if you...
Oh, I'm
if you'll
sorry. I'm
Trail the
sorry.
closed session.
Oh, okay. Forget it, Peter. Okay, so now,
Oh, so that was moved to closed session?
After close session.
Oh,
The trail after closed session.
oh.
okay. So now,
Manager's report.
manager's report.
Madam President, members of the board, I would recommend that we move on to closed session now, just because we have consultants that are waiting to be a part of that, if that's okay. And we can do this after we come back with the remainder of the meeting.
Okay.
So we got a
So,
call for what we're doing.
Oh. okay, so now we are going into closed session. 9A, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. The board will be considering whether to initiate litigation pursuant to the Government Code 54956.9 D4-1 potential something administrative proceeding. 9B, conference with real property negotiators, Government Code 54956.8, property appropriative water rights owned by Calaveras County Water District, district negotiators, John Mills and Kevin O'Brien, under negotiation, price, and other terms. Okay, so I ask for public comment. Seeing none, closed session.